August 3rd, 2023, 12:09 a.m. Uncle Michael was among the men admired most by me for fires glowing, two-wheeled tires wired rolling. Round him saddle nights he spoke of what seemed he desired most, that I would know my mind been blown by thoughts he'd had that timely told of things that he had seen and heard as came of age and a bit beyond. Alongside sat my cousins, my at how the hours by had flown. Uncle Michael was among the men admired most by me for fires glowing, two-wheeled tires wired rolling. Round him sat on nights he spoke of what seemed he desired most, that I would know my mind been blown by thoughts he'd had that timely told of things that he had seen and heard as came of age and a bit beyond. Alongside sat my cousins, my at how the hours by had flown. I listened so intently to his voice that seemed so thunderous, though calm and cool, collected, he composed what was you trust a must. He wasn't much for singing lead, but haunted with a ghostly tone that sang to us a somber song, not one so sad, not one so long. His closest, I among them, wasn't many who inspired those. The talks we had, I'd have called him Dad, but mine would not have liked to know that I at one time thought much more of him than had my father, though. With time I would indeed grow to appreciate them both for souls that seemed so out of reach for me, who only stood about half their size. But no one I've ever known has towered like my Uncle Mike. No one I've known in life has towered like my Uncle Mike. Tall and strong, his shoulders broad, could open wide the eyes of blind. Didn't mind if had to pry, he kept a crowbar by his side. Could pick a lock, could build a bomb, many though, not one would drop. Was just in case those showed the cops there at the spot when things got hot. Uncle Michael was among the men admired most by me for fires glowing in the night, retiring roasts. Round him told me mostly what was fiery jokes, made light though not of God when spoke of, often with a smile he froze. He poked at me with inquiries, looking down his long nose, knowing what he'd hesitate to say as if he knew I had not known. Why he would be inquiring, posed a question, answers no one knows. He asked me if the plans I had would be accomplished, I'd suppose. He laughed there in my face at times, was innocent enough at least to think that I had known so much at only then just 2 or 3. He told me I would be surprised to find in life once seasoned some, that there was so much more to be than just what's seen by peepers, punks. We all were round us fires hot, with souls that froze, flowed over froth. Volcanoes each to soon erupt with what would catch the eye of God. If only he was looking, he'd have seen us, now I had no doubt, as Mike would pull his guitar out, his big heart silent, drown mine out. Or so I felt it did there looking, on as he would strum a chord, just getting bored, would done his chores, and ours would soon be done some more. We paused to watch and listen as he made it look so effortless, seemed hell-bent, also heaven-sent, was heavenly, yet devilish. Rebellious as a younger man, could see it in his fiery gaze, a strange look on his smiling face that seemed to say, I'm trying to play. We'll talk a bit more briefly once I've smoked through at least a few of these. The strumming of his thunder strings were unlike any other band. I longed for him to notice me, not sure though what he'd even see. I wanted him to recognize that I was not so unlike he, that I could not pick quickly up on what it was he's putting down, most often seemed a hammer. Swift replaced it with more fitting found, a guitar pick that felt so good there, held between my fingertips, the first time that he shared with me. The strings beneath my fingers slipped. Was nervous then to say the least, determined though I wouldn't quit. The neighbors didn't like it much, I'm certain. We didn't give a shit. He'd crank it up as high as goes and laugh out loud at cars by going, turning up their snooty nose while his seemed to be snorting smoke. He'd shake his head at them and say some folks were stiffs, then giving thanks in his own way. He offered praise in silence to someone unnamed. someone he would later say to me that he appreciated, someone who made him look lame, as if he could, to me so game. To play whatever may suggest, he often wasn't much for games. Instead, he valued conversations, only at the proper time and place. Wasn't much for lengthy spills, just spoke a few for some strange thrill he seemed to get from being killed by what revealed was once concealed. Somehow it seems he lived to tell a story for there was no words. Instead, just noise to curb the urge. For what he yearned, a page was turned. A novel wrote on just one page, a quick note he'd had jotted down. They're folded in my pocket when in washers drowned, and God knows now how dirty were my outfits when I came back home from his next door. The place where I first came to know the name of who now called my Lord. He sat me down a couple times and gave me quite the peace of mind. It might not be the way you see things, warning me, did all the time. But he would speak his piece at least on what's been waged on us by them, whoever they were quick forgot, when I was in the midst of him. Who told me that he couldn't see, who told me that he couldn't see how so many could be this way, the way that he would never be. He'd stay the same, wouldn't never change. Though he'd admit that he would grow, to likely soon deny such claims he'd make in haste to thrones upon, sat striking at his axe for days. He may or may not have been so intent to instill this in me, but did in spite of he himself, who did things quite a bit differently. At first sight, wasn't smitten with him, didn't too much interest me, till seen him sit his six string singing, fell in love with instantly. Had just got off work, had dirt and dust all over. From his back, his shoulders shook, wrapped up in leather. Shot a look at Mama crooking. Seemed to say it's about that time for you to plug your ears again. And Mama would. He wore a smile that almost seemed an evil grin. As out of nowhere with a howl came thunderous, a growling sound, like wolves cry at the harvest moon, like Hendrix chopped a mountain down. My mind was blown, how time had flown. Felt graduated cap and gown as he would pass his axe around. The house say, he just clowning round. Showed us how each one of us was quite a few there in that home. That after work a Thunderdome would turn into some other zone, where we could be ourselves for once, just kids with nothing much to do. He'd sit, say, since I'm stuck with you, then suddenly would come unglued. The walls would shake, they rattled hard, his tall shape cast a shadow sharp. If anybody had a heart, they felt as there in battles charged. I heard a buck wild wildebeest beneath my feet that shook me up. He'd joke and say in time of need, just look me up and he'd cook something up. Whatever was the flavor of the week, it wouldn't interest much. He liked the rougher, tougher stuff, what most folks just call junk or just. You'd have to his take on things, was loud and proud, his voice not spoke, but silence mostly daggers cloaked. He'd vanish in a puff of smoke. I wondered often what it was that made him seem so hard to know. For quite a while in life was there, no matter man how far we'd go. Didn't always get along so great, had times a few we disagreed, but never once did not respect the words that he would speak to me. To this day, I'm not so sure he even knows what mean to me. Not much that I could say in words, those memories seem now such a dream, compared to harsh reality without him here to reassure. I often wonder why I even think so much of these. No more adored. The moment small and unsuspecting, least until he'd show surprise. Me many times of what he shared was often just a watchful eye that looked me up and down, accusing me of what was guilty of, and how he knew I had no clue. Sometimes, though, he would look above, as if to search for some sure proof of who he knew I knew was there. But giving up, he'd heavy shrug and sigh as deep as demons dare, to dive into demeaning lairs, find shelter there where no one cares. His happiness might seem despair, speak freely, always open air, saying to me, so debonair. Didn't seem to mind so much if someone else might disagree. He knew what he was talking about, if he even spoke, not just to me. Seemed everything he said was sound of some sort, though most weren't so sure that we should hang with him no more. They often left an open door behind them as they'd exit with whoever they had brought along. Knew he wasn't scared of much. Had big black guns to guard his home. Mags stacked almost wall to wall in one room with half-naked broads, belt-fed weapons blasting off. Bikinis sat on tanks that talked, like we did when he wasn't around, just firing off round after round at targets we'd take aim at, often just the neighbor's basset hounds. Snooping round with his snickering snout, catch him off guard, smack his mouth with BBs, talk on CBs, cut some CDs, many tracks by now. Most would wind up trashed about the time the next was tracking down Audacity. We had as loud and proud as he had hacked 'em down. A lumberjack, plug jacks, and jousting. Doobies might be passed around, but not while we were attentive to the few who knew how he got down. We'd smell him though on clothes he wore. Even heard him swore a time or two, but not when we were close enough to say for sure just what he knew. Was sharing under breath that spoken, just so none of youngins heard. I'd lean in toward to hear his words that seemed to curse thought so absurd. His sister for her constant work at what had not paid off for her. My mom who often called him jerk, and he would laugh out loud and smirk. Tell her to live a little. Then from nowhere come with what was worse on her than seeing me giving birth to. Screeching down the strings would stir up trouble of some strange new sort, the type I'd never seen before, and couldn't see his fingers fast, would blur, distort, perspectives warped. Like hands across a Ouija board. I'd try to wrap my mind around whatever was had happened now, while all the while he'd laugh out loud, snatch up axes, slap 'em round. Won't forget the time or two he passed 'em out and I'd found my fingers on the fretboard foul, could see it in his face that frowned. He'd snatch it back and show me how and let me have another go at what still to this day I do. It ain't the type of muse for most. He'd squint hard trying to cope with all the noise pollution, often posed the question when he had the chance between heavy strokes take stabs and pokes. He asked if we had plans to play the show that night as we'd both rose to high-five, holler, hell yeah, filling in for drunks who'd done the most. My cousin, I would sometimes try to keep up with his licks, but weren't as much for as he was for striking folk with currents, coasting blurs of blokes. He played the blues guitar to match, was one he handed down to me, and I ain't never been no king, but swear I felt he's crowning me. It didn't stand the test of time, but not because it wasn't a worth, but just because I treat better dirt. Had a lot still left to learn. It pop got hot and trunk shut tight, a car I crashed, and what a crock. I should have had it at the spot, but playing all day couldn't stop. By the time I crashed my Firebird, forgotten I'd left it there. Walking home, still tripping, bare feet blistered on the asphalt, faring against the weather well enough. I lit the world without a care. When I'd returned to pull it out the ditch I dug, I found it there. That blue guitar was broken now, in pieces I was picking up. Thinking about these chords to strum, would be a while for I'd see one. They held a candle to my first real acoustic six-string, one went rogue. Just like my Uncle Michael did, seemed every day that did unfold. He seemed to me a character from shows I wasn't allowed to watch. Couldn't help but think of him when Michael Jackson grabbed his crotch. Just 'cause he's kind of tongue-in-cheek as well. Leather jackets, jerry curls, my uncle didn't care for when he changed his style to suit the world. But looked the part of partners he might have shown up there out the blue, where they would sit and play a while and we might try to peek in soon. My cousins and I would join in bands, break up like his way too soon. We ain't quite land yet among the stars, but best believe we shot the moon. Anyway, it wasn't long before my life was gone too soon. He's still alive, just don't talk to me. Not his fault, it's my fault too. His son, if you ask me, ain't quite the same as us, man, me and him. Though he might disagree with me, I know that we are closer kin. He told me first of Jesus in a way I felt could understand, that he was like no other man, a rugged ran with gutter tramps. Much less a lamb, seemed more a ram, at least when he and I might jam. I couldn't quite keep up with him, but tried real hard or I'll be damned. He wasn't much for Uncle Tom, a bit more man like Uncle Sam, but not quite either. Or a man Mike, we cut from man some other plan. He taught me a bit about reaping, sowing, harvest comes where work is done. Told me there wasn't but one God, added that he had a son. Told me I might hate him for his saying so, I didn't though. He might have thought I did, but no. It made some kind of sense or so. Left me with many still unanswered questions I wouldn't dare to pose. Just glad to see when comes around, though since then we ain't been so close. His son has done his share for me. I appreciate the times we had, but I don't care for his son that much. Would love him if that was my dad. Left me with many still unanswered questions I won't dare to pose. Just glad to see when comes around, though since then we ain't been so close. His son has done his share to me. And I appreciate those times we had, but I don't care for his son that much. Would love him if that was my dad.